Hi guys, this is Julian from Eat the Blocks, and this is a new video on the series on how to build a to-do list decentralized application on Ethereum. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any video. So if you never heard of a to-do list before, it's pretty simple. It's a simple application where you can create tasks, read tasks, edit tasks, and delete them. So it's used as an example to introduce some framework. And for example, there's the famous one, which is called ToDo MVC. If you haven't watched the previous videos, you can find them at this URL. So if you click on a link, for example, this one, you will find the link to the YouTube video here. In the last episode of this series, we set up a Node.js server so we can serve our static frontend. So we can currently load the frontend in the browser, but there isn't much in it. In this episode, we will set up the basic infrastructure to communicate with the blockchain from the front end. For this, we will use Web3, which is the most popular client library for Ethereum. By the way, I already did some video about Web3, so you can check them out on this URL and this URL. So we will start from the code of the last episode, and for this you're going to clone the repo from GitHub. So the repo of Eat the Blocks is this URL. So you're going to clone this if you haven't done so already, and if you already have it, then you need to refresh it with a git pull. And then we're going to step into this folder of this series, special episode 1. And then we're going to remove the folder of step 4, which is this step, because we're going to build it together. So we're going to remove it like this. And after that, we're going to copy the folder of the third episode and create it into a new folder. And we're going to add the recursive flag here. Okay, so let's see that we have something inside. Yeah, okay, it's fine. So now we're going to go inside the folder of step 4. I'm going to clear my screen. And now I'm going to install the npm dependencies. So if you haven't followed the previous video, basically step 3, we used a truffle project. So here you can see all the truffle file. Okay, so we've set up our project for step 4. So now we're going to set up the JavaScript files. So we will set up a folder for our front-end JavaScript code. So in the previous video, we created a folder called app to host our front-end. So we will create this JavaScript folder inside. So let's create a folder JavaScript inside app. Okay. And then we will create a JavaScript file inside and open it. So okay, I'm gonna clear my screen. And then I open it. So to edit the file, I use Vim, but of course you can use whatever code editor you want. So we'll just put a dummy statement inside. I'll say loaded, for example, because I want to make sure that this loads properly on the front end. Okay. And we will need to load this JavaScript file from index.html, so which is our HTML file here. So if you go to app, yeah, you will see it here. So currently it's empty. So we're going to open this file as well. Okay, and so we're going to add a script tag just before the closing body. So script source Okay, and we also going to copy the jQuery tag. So for this, actually, I don't remember the URL by heart, so I'm going to check the repo of Eat the Blocks for that. Okay, so special episode 1, step 4, app, index.html. Okay, and it's here. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to make sure that this works in our browser. So for this, we're going to start our server. Okay. And so open a new tab in your browser, and we're going to see if this works. Okay, so now you're going to open your dev console, and you should see loaded. Okay, so our JavaScript file is loaded. And now how about jQuery? So if I type jQuery in the console, then I should see something like this. Okay, so it works. If you had problem to load jQuery, then it wouldn't show you this, but it will show you undefined. So next, we will need to install Web3, the library we'll use on the front end to interact with the smart contract on the back end. So it's possible to install Web3 with npm and then use tools like Webpack to load it on the front end. But for this video, we will do something more simple and directly load Web3 by referencing it directly from the HTML file. So for this, we can just take the source code of Web3 because in its original form, it's not runnable browser side. What we want is a version of Web3 that has been packaged for the front end. So for this, there is a long and a short version. So for the short version, we'll just copy the repo of Eat the Blocks. But for the long version, if you want to understand what's going on and how I produce this this package file for the front end, then you can check the article of this video on the website of Eat the Blocks. So for the video, we'll do the simple version. So we'll go to the repo of Eat the Blocks in oops, it's not that one. Oh, this one. And we will go, so in the folder special episode 1 step 4, then we'll go in the app folder, and there is a vendor sorry, a vendor directory, and in this vendor directory you can see a file called web3.min.js. so that's the one we need. And so we click on it, and we're going to click on the button that says raw, and because this is the easiest to copy some code from GitHub. Okay, and then we're going to copy everything. So Control A or Command A, and then copy, and then go back to your terminal. And so actually I'm going to open another tab sorry, another tab, so I can keep my browser running at the same time. So Vim app, and then actually we need to create the directory first. So app, and then vendor, and then we're going to create this file. So web3.min.js, and now we're going to copy everything. Okay, so is this correct? Yeah, so looks correct. Okay, so now we need to load this code from the index.html file. So for this, we're going to go back to our HTML file. Oops, Vim complained because I have this file open elsewhere. Okay, let me briefly exit this Vim session. Okay, gonna reload the server here. Okay, And so we're going to load Web3 from the HTML file. So for this, we add a script tag. So just before that, checking that it works in your browser, actually, we need to reload the server because we changed the file. So it's a little bit annoying to do this every time. And in a future video, we'll see how we can automate it. But at the moment, we'll just have to go through the pain of doing this every time. And so now we go back to our browser, where before we load the application, and then we're going to reload it. And now to check that Web3 is loaded, then I'm going to type Web3 in the dev console. And if you see an output like this, it means it works. So there is a little caveat here. It's Web3 with an uppercase W, but you will see later in the code that actually after we instantiate Web3, we will use a variable called Web3 with a lowercase w. So don't be confused. Before we connect Web3 to our local blockchain, we need to start the blockchain first. And for this, we will use ganache-cli, an Ethereum client for development. So ganache-cli is available as an npm package. So we will install it with this command: npm install global ganache-cli. The global flag is important because you want to be able to use the command line of Ganache from anywhere. So if you forget it, then you'll have to install it for every project where you need it. So it's not really convenient. Once you've installed Ganache, you're going to start it with this command, ganache-cli. In my case, I'm actually going to create a new terminal tab for that because I already have my Vim session running. So I'm going to run it like this. Okay, so that's the output you see when ganache-cli is starting. By the way, Ganache also has a GUI called ganache-cli. If you want to know more about it, you can watch the 2 videos I made about it on YouTube. So the first one is installing the Ganache-cli, and the second one is how to use the Ganache-cli and connect it with Truffle. So now let's verify that we are able to connect Web3 to our development blockchain by reading the blockchain accounts from the frontend with Web3. So for this, we will switch to index.js file and we will instantiate Web3. So we'll declare a variable Web3 and it's going to be equal to new Web3. So remember what I mentioned just before, there was a caveat here. Web3, the libraries was an uppercase W, but the variable we're going to use is a lowercase w. And then we're going to pass the URL to ganache-cli, which is by default if you don't change the setting, http localhost 8545. And in case you don't remember this, you can just check in the window of ganache-cli and it will give you this information. It will say listening on localhost 8545. Okay, back to our JavaScript file. So we have our Web3 object, and now we're going to list the accounts that ganache-cli provide for us. So if you follow some of our previous video, you probably remember that ganache-cli, when it starts, creates 10 accounts pre-funded with some fake ether. So we're going to get the balance of those accounts. So for this, we're going to use the Web3 object, and then under the if key, we're going to call the getAccounts function, and then we're going to pass it the console log function so we can see it in the dev console. Okay, we save this and we reload our server, and then we switch to our application on the browser, and we can see that we can see all our accounts here, so like 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay, so yeah, I mean we can see the accounts. So far we haven't wrote any HTML, but we will in the next videos. So we'll get prepared and set up the CSS. So we'll go back to our terminal, and we will create a CSS folder. So for this, mkdir CSS, and then we will create a style sheet in it. Okay, and then we'll go inside this file, and I'm not going to explain the CSS because this series is not about that and it's not the most interesting. So what we will simply do is go in a repository of ToDo on GitHub and go to the folder of this episode, and in this app CSS folder, then you'll just copy the CSS. So click on row and copy everything, and go back to your style sheet and copy everything. Okay, and now we need to add a reference to this in the index.html. So we will create a head section and reference this style sheet. And we will also use Bootstrap, and we will load it directly from its public CDN, so we don't have to download it. So I'm going to check on the repo of ToDo as well. So go back to the app directory, and then in the index.html file, I will see the reference to Bootstrap. Okay, Bootstrap here. I copy it. So very briefly, if you're not familiar with Bootstrap, it's a very popular CSS framework, and in simple words, it will allow us to have a decent looking app without too much effort. So it's great, especially for developers who don't want to spend any time on styling. And we are still missing some tag actually in our head block, like some meta tag and title tags. So for this, I'm also going to copy directly from the repo of ToDo. Okay. Out of these tags, there is one which is really important, and it's this one. Sorry, it's this one, the name viewport, because it will make our CSS responsive on mobile. So the last thing we will do in preparation of the next video is to set up some very basic HTML. So the classes we will use are from Bootstrap. So probably that you will, those who are familiar with Bootstrap, they will recognize them. So what we will do is we'll go to the repo of ToDo. Basically, we will copy what we have in the body up to the footer. And we don't need to copy the scripts because we already have these. So we copy this, and we go in the body section here. And we copy everything, and we can get rid of this "it works" statement here. Okay. And now let's see how it looks like. So we reload the development server and go back to our browser, reload. So it's still very basic, but we are making progress. So in the next video of this series, we will use the truffle contract package to be able to interact easily with the smart contract. So stay tuned, and if you like this video, you can like it, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And it's time for me to end this video. Bye guys.